So that squarely fits with the YWCA's mission to eliminate racism and empower women. Working at this intersection of race, gender, and violence, prevention is key. And it's with this mission mandate and in our work as prevention practitioners that we understand this connection between racism and violence. But for example, there is a disproportionate rate of violence that people of color experience. The criminal justice system mass incarcerates and punishes people of color more harshly than white people. And our movement, our agencies, we can't deny that we replicate oppression, power imbalances, and racism within our own mainstream organizations. So I want to name that and center on this intersectionality so that in allyship, we must continue to explore, learn, reflect, and commit to action. Centering on that, I want to thank our partners. We are so humble in our partnership with ACCI and Community Solutions. They are extraordinary people, extraordinary organizations. We thank them for their partnership. We are working together to advance this work of preventing sexual assault and intimate partner violence all throughout our county. We are also so grateful for the coalition work with the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And joining us here today is Magna Bott, and she will help share and amplify stories. I also want to thank President of our County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Cindy Chavez, for not only being a part of today's conversation, but for her extraordinary leadership and game-changing solutions for our community. Back to you, team. Excited for what is next.
Thank you, Tanis. Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Wiley. I'm the Prevention, Education, and Community Engagement Coordinator here at YWCA. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Yeah. Okay. So just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A. If we can, we will answer it right then, or we'll wait to the end of the presentation to answer that for you. So again, thank you for joining us. Tanis, thank you for that welcome message. We appreciate you. Like Tanis said, Supervisor Chavez will be joining us. She'll be joining us later on in the presentation. Also joining us is Santa Clara County Supervisor Dave Cortese. He will be joining us shortly as well. Today on this call, we have our community partners, Community Solutions, and ACCI. We're happy to have them join us today. Another wonderful community partner that we have is the Office of Gender-Based Violence. They are a great resource here in the county. Also, some of the programs that we're going to be talking about today, they help with the funding. So I see that Supervisor Cortese is on. Welcome. Thank you. We're honored to have you here today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Is it an opportunity for me to say a few words?
Yes, this is the perfect time. Okay. Go ahead.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your leadership, for the leadership of the YWCA, especially across issues involving gender violence. Supervisor Chavez and I have dedicated, an enormous amount of effort over the last couple of years, particularly trying to break through and catch up on this issue that is somehow over the years, I feel got pushed under the surface, despite the fact that it is by volume, by emergency contact that comes in through our hotlines, by any measure, one of the most significant issues that we face in terms of trying to turn the tide. So thank you so much for putting an equity lens on the issue of gender violence and domestic violence. it is critical now more than ever as we see a confluence of so many movements coming together, the women's movement, and Black Lives Matter, and the immigration movement, and LGBTQ efforts, and so many others coming together now in a movement really that I believe will lead to enormous positive and irreversible change in our country, in our state, and here locally. But it's all because of you, and it's because of the cumulative efforts, not only at the grassroots level, but at the community-based level, where organizations like the Y really pull together all of that grassroots energy, work with institutions like the County of Santa Clara, where there are huge budget shifts and changes in any given year. In fact, sometimes on any given Tuesday, to make sure that these issues are prioritized, not just with speech, not just with lip service, not just with concern or compassion. Those are all important, maybe not the lip service, but the compassion is important, but with investment. None of this gets anywhere without investment. And I just want to tell you that I stand with you. I know Supervisor Chavez stands with you, and I believe a majority of the Board of Supervisors will always stand with you in your efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Cortese. We really appreciate you being here today. We appreciate your support and joining this discussion, this important discussion of empowering our youth and empowering our community as a whole. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to introduce Meghna Bout. She is the Prevention Program Director from CalCASA, the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. She will be presenting today. I'd like to see. Meghna, you could go ahead.
Thank you, Erica. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the warm welcome. I do have a little bit of the notes here, so if I do look a little away from the screen, it's not to be disrespectful. You know, working from home has its own obstacles, so just wanted to let you know that. Next slide, please. So I would like to start this presentation a little non-conventionally by sharing a story. Next. So I grew up in India. That's where I was born, and I learned karate only for a bit. My dad is a huge fan of Bruce Lee, so you can see me just posing, but I really don't know karate, so just wanted to put it out there. But I have a younger sibling. We're very close, and while growing up, I experienced multiple forms of street harassment as a young girl. Like a lot of peers, like a lot of other young girls, not just in India, but also all over the world, unfortunately. And while growing up, I also encountered sexual harassment and sexual assault more than once. So it took me a long time to realize that what I had experienced was sexual harassment and sexual assault, or that being victimized by street harassment wasn't less traumatizing. It was traumatizing and unpleasant, right? And again, as I do want to highlight that it was not just relevant to India, but elsewhere, even in the US, and all other countries. Next. So I grew up with working parents in India and in the city of Mumbai. These are my paternal grandparents who lived with us. And it was actually my paternal grandmom, as you can see, it's on after they got married, she took care of us while my mom was working full time. We called her Ai, which actually means mom. Even though she was a grandmom, we all lovingly called Ai. She was universal Ai for all of us. And she was barely 17 or 15 when she got married at that time. And my grandfather was double her age. She had not completed her education, yet she actually surprisingly wanted us two granddaughters to complete our education. There was not a single moment where she asked us, when are you getting married, or when are you having kids, or she would never ask us those questions, which usually you would have expected in terms of her upbringing and her life. But I think one thing I kind of grew up knowing that she was a child when she got married, and that stuck to me. right? But also because she did not complete her education, she would like read newspapers, ask us what was written in English so she could be updated with what's happening around. She wouldn't limit herself from that. We would also see her angry and frustrated sometimes, and we would not understand as kids what happened. And we loved her. We still love her, and even though she passed away two years ago, we cared for her till she passed away. But I could not dismiss the fact that she had endured some form of oppression or abuse or trauma in her relationships or life. And even though I could not get that story from her because it was a different time, I kind of acknowledged that she had experienced some form of violence and abuse. But let me kind of highlight what I took from her. What she taught us is, or what she taught me is to be unapologetic for being authentic, to embrace our curiosity and quest for learning. Next. Those are my parents on their wedding day. They completed 41 years this year. And I do this for my mom. She's a school teacher. She's been teaching for 30 years. And that's where I think I've got the educator bug in me. I usually don't share my mom's story in terms of this moment, and because she's healed and moved on. But I do want to let you know what motivated me, and especially from her role and her life experiences. She had also experienced fear and witnessed fear and emotional abuse from extended family, being in that marriage, but immense support and intervention from my dad. So she did not experience that from my dad. It was mainly from extended family. But what my mom taught me was that she still teaches me, is not to be fearful, to be afraid, not to be afraid of, and kind of get out of our comfort zone while being grounded, right? So if you know that I took a one-way flight like 16 years ago, hopping to the US from India, and if I had that strength and a feeling that grounded, to come 8,000 miles by flight to a new country, I saw the strength in her eyes, and that's what inspired me. Next. That's my dad. I got this opportunity and privilege to recognize male identified allies from seeing my dad, who has always stood up to fight injustice or has intervened when he saw someone being harassed on the streets. Even though we would get worried about the consequences of him being outspoken about social issues, and even though I may not condone the kind of the punitive or the vigilante justice that we grew up in that culture, he did teach me to speak up. Standing up when someone is experiencing harassment or violence, not to blame victims or survivors if they have left abusive relationships. His active support for my mom while she endured the emotional abuse from our relatives taught me what male identified allyship could look like. Next. That's my sister, younger sister, and I'm in this moment for her, who has taught me to be proud of my values, be assertive and speak up, especially when I'm perceived as a woman of color in this country, right? Her resilience and compassion for me and others inspires me every day. And these are the values that I hold on to, and this is why I'm in the moment, one of the reasons. Next. So I arrived, as I mentioned, I arrived in the US on a one-way ticket 16 years ago, completed my master's in criminal justice in Philadelphia. But that's where I took victimology and restorative justice courses, the two courses that transformed my life, the way I looked at gender violence and other forms of abuse. I started my PhD in the criminology law and justice program at UIC Chicago. That's like my chosen family away from home for so long. And my doctoral dissertation focused on the representations of violence against women in Bollywood cinema, and also provoked me to think beyond intervention and advocacy. It made me wonder how we can talk about the role of sexist and misogynist representations in our cinema and popular culture, and how that can contribute to prevention. Next. So I took all the opportunities presented to me by campus. I went beyond my school classrooms and my books. Even as a PhD a research nerd, I kind of learned about the intergenerational cycles of abuse, and how activism and community organizing by my fabulous colleagues and campus in Chicago kind of taught me a lot about intersectionality and the different social building moments going on. As a survivor of sexual violence myself, I wanted to learn more and also engage communities to have this dialogue of how to prevent this form of sexual violence happening in the first place, right? So while I was doing my PhD, I came across my Calcasa, I attended all the web conferences, and I realized, as contrary to the South Asian traditional path of taking STEM majors, I found my path and my passion, and I have never looked back after. And I look forward to every day to being a part of this movement. I wish it wasn't, I wish it was. It's idealistic to say I wish there was a community free of violence, right? But this is what we are, and this means a lot more than a career for me. At Calcasa, I help our member agencies and people to build prevention programs, strengthen their capacity to shift the culture. Uh, Prevention is something that I can talk whole day and every time. And I can see that enthusiasm being shared by all of us on this panel and more in our audience. It gives me the hope and resilience to see our communities free of violence. I also engage in digital storytelling through Story Center in Berkeley and use that and film representations as tools for social change and prevention. So it is exciting to see all of you here interested in prevention. I applaud each one of you, especially YWCA, Silicon Valley team, and all the other organizations for investing your time and your time and insights and experiences in prevention. Next. So I know we don't have a lot of time for interactive this, but I would like to, read later maybe is why is prevention important to you? So if you could briefly reply in the text chat, I will take a look later, even if it's time, if it's time permitting, but if not, I'll definitely try to reply to some of the responses via the text chat. Next. So a lot of people ask me, what is prevention? We know prevention in our daily lives, like how to prevent from like you look left, right, and left when you're at the traffic light, right? How do you prevent yourself from being hit at the traffic? I know it's a very, not a very great example to give right now, but I'm just saying like those examples come to our mind immediately, but how do you frame prevention or place prevention in our movement to end the cycle of sexual and domestic violence? Next. So I'm going to share with you another story, and some of you may be already aware of it. There was once a person enjoying an afternoon by a beautiful river. They were relaxing and listening to the sound of this rushing water, right? When they suddenly heard a cry. Someone was in the river being actually carried along by the rapid currents. The person jumped in and helped them to shore. And after they got all dried off, he heard more cries and yells. They turned to the river and they could see more people being tossed around in the treacherous current. They continued pulling people out of the river, but found that for every person they rescued, there was another one crying for help. As you can understand, it could be overwhelming. It was overwhelming, and they were getting exhausted. Finally, they thought, I do need to go upstream to find out why all these people are ending up in the river. And moving upstream is a way to think about primary prevention. Next. So primary prevention is stopping sexual violence before it has a chance to happen. And if we think of prevention as being upstream, right? Looking at reasons why people ended up in the river in the first place. Is it the bridge with huge holes in it? Is someone standing upstream, upriver at the bridge and pushing people down? Or are people looking at their cell phones and walking, right? Today's times. So I think by moving upstream, we can get to the root of the problem and change the conditions that are allowing this to happen. And this is why I believe in prevention. My quest is to go upstream to find those root causes that create this culture that condone and normalize sexual and domestic violence. Next. So a lot of, I get these questions, and I'm sure you get it as well. Why invest in prevention? Why is prevention required, right? If we want to see a shift in culture, we do need to invest in prevention. And I feel like it is in fact critical to the wellness or the well-being and safety, and also kind of lifetime growth in in our communities, in our culture. Advocacy, intervention, public policy, and research is absolutely critical. But prevention is also needs to be prioritized, right? We need to elevate the work of prevention work, the prevention programs that have been happening. Next. But if you're still interested in to know why, I would like to actually pose this question. Did you know that approximately 1 in 5 women in the US have experienced rape or attempted rape in their lifetime? And among women reporting a history of completed rape, 40% experienced it before age 18. If you were not aware of these numbers, and this is just a one needle in the haystack, right? Unfortunately. So I would like us to be mindful and sit with those numbers for a second. They are pretty shocking. And these are I'm just talking about those who identify as women and those who reported rape or attempted rape. I would also, kind of like to address that, as with other forms of violence, racial, ethnic, and sexual minority, or I would say more marginalized groups, such as those who identify as LGBTQI, are disproportionately impacted by sexual violence. Even as Tanis mentioned, it's also our marginalized groups like Black and Brown women, Native American women, indigenous groups. They are more at risk for being, they're more at risk for experiencing sexual and domestic violence as well. So next. We have to start prevention efforts early, even though I know I mentioned before 18, because the good thing is prevention has to be started early, because sexual violence starts early at an early part of the lifespan. So as you see, it is connected with other forms of violence. You can see that it's connected, even though I may be talking or addressing sexual violence, it's also connected to domestic violence. It's connected to bullying, right? It's connected to sexual abuse. So I want us to be mindful that, for example, perpetrating bullying in middle school is associated with subsequent sexual harassment perpetration. Or those girls who have been sexually abused are likely to suffer physical violence and sexual violence re-victimization. So I definitely encourage us all to know that each of these may be distinct in terms of nature, trends, and prevalence, but these are all connected. Sexual violence does not happen in a vacuum. Next. So, as you can see, the economic costs of sexual violence in California are astronomical. Sexual violence cost the state of California in 2012, $140 billion. In a moment, I just want us to pause, right? I also want to kind of highlight the fact that in California, the lifetime economic burden of domestic violence nationwide is $3.6 trillion. And while we are trying to process those numbers, I want to amplify and highlight in bold the health and well-being consequences of gender violence on those affected by it. It could include physical injury, medical problems, poor mental health outcomes, post-traumatic stress disorder, chronic health issues in terms of reproductive health, lost work productivity, school, if they're studying, they are likely to lose, miss school, skip school, right? Decreased quality of life, and sometimes death. And as much as economic costs are critical to understand, we should invest in prevention. We need to keep in mind that it also affects our community's health and well-being. It's an epidemic, and we need to look at it as a public health issue. Next. So where do we start? Actually, next. So this is prevention is the future, right? Prevention, I believe, is the present as well. And the good thing is that it's not too late to start prevention in your communities. If you're new to prevention and you're like, oh, you know what, it's too late, it's too difficult to change people's mind, I would politely decline and say, no, it's never too late to start prevention in your communities or your work or anywhere else. So this is one of the many prevention approaches that I would like to just address and briefly highlight. It's called the socio-ecological model. Some of you may be aware of it. It's a way to look at comprehensive prevention approach for many different health issues. Next. So this is the individual one. Sorry, just a little slowly. The individual one, which is kind of it looks at the attitudes, values, and beliefs, right? The second one is a relationship with family members, partners, and friends. It could be your biological families, it could be your chosen families. It extends beyond the conventional tradition of a family or relationships. The third one is the community level. Do you see yourself in these? Do you see yourself as as a part of a neighborhood or the faith community, or as a part of a sports group? If you're an athlete or you're a parent of an athlete, that becomes your community as well, right? And the last one is a society, which is kind of the largest one. As you see, each egg represents an area in which you can create change. And the last one is the laws, systems, media, and widespread social norms. So you can see changes at this level in terms of policy and legislation changes, media representations, and so on. But how do we bring about these widespread societal norms without making changes on the other level? They're all different spheres and interact with each other and can influence each other. So even if you say that, you know what, I can make changes in these relationships or on an individual level, they have ripple effects on the community level. They will have ripple effects on the societal level. So don't lose hope. Continue those ongoing prevention work or advocacy that you're doing. And each, as I said, the efficient prevention programs usually focus on multiple levels of this socio-ecological model. Next. So what would it look like in terms of in our day-to-day lives? And I know the figure is kind of the other way around, but I'm not going to go in depth, but I just want to briefly kind of go through some of these, how would socio-ecological model look like in different settings with kind of similar, different groups. Next. So for example, on an individual level, it could be talking about communication or increasing self-esteem for young girls. Relationship could be about consent, teaching consent and setting boundaries, right? Community could look like community advocacy and bystander intervention. What to do when you see someone being harassed on a street, for example, or in a bus, or if you hear incident, kind of a domestic violence situation going on. How do you intervene? And there are different, very evidence-based research that shows different strategies of how to intervene as a bystander. And the last is societal media literacy, as I spoke about media representations or gender socialization, to kind of go beyond those traditional gender norms and gender roles, like the man box, right? When we think about masculinity. So these are some of the examples, and I have shared a resource list with YWCA with Erica, and I know she would share it with you all later. So some of these links are covered in that resource sheet. Next. So this is, for example, encouraging work at all levels prevents sexual violence. It's a multifaceted approach, right? It could take all stakeholders. We all play a role in preventing sexual violence, whether it's learning attitudes and behaviors that support equality and respect, or whether it is promoting laws supporting bystander intervention or asking for prevention funding. Next. Public policy is, this is Start Strong, which was kind of by Futures Without Violence. The socio-ecological model, as you can see, is within the setting of middle school. And I know this is a very basic graphic, but I would definitely encourage you to take a look at the resource for Start Strong, Futures Without Violence. Next. So addressing root causes. Next. What do we mean by root causes, right? For example, as you see, it means these are the factors that have created a culture where inequality thrives. Violence is seen as normal, where we minimize violence or we are being desensitized to violence. And that results from all forms of oppression, whether it's racism, sexism, or any of the other forms of oppression mentioned here, as you can see the root causes, right? So for example, if you work in immigrant communities, you work for housing or homelessness, or you work with youth, or those working in marginalized groups such as Black and brown communities or indigenous groups, we all have to be aligned and on board towards eradicating these forms of oppression in order to prevent and end sexual violence and domestic violence. Everything is interconnected and intertwined, right? Next. So we need to replace it with a new cultural norms, whether it's equality, safety, and respect are the norms. I also would like to add two more, which is I feel accessibility, whether it's terms of physical accessibility, in terms of accessing these prevention programs, or language accessibility. And that's something we need to keep it in mind. And even in terms of equity, there are means of achieving equality is through finding ways of making it equitable. Next. So prevention aims to change these systems so that equality, respect, and safety are the norms. And we need to all use our privileges to amplify and uplift the voices and experiences of other marginalized groups in order to more create like safer and violence-free communities and spaces. Next. So, prevention works. I believe that you may have found those who are already doing prevention work, that's amazing. Prevention does work. And those who are new to prevention, you are here because you are interested in learning about prevention. Prevention is important and you believe in that in some level, right? I know I have a time. Okay. We are, okay, a minute over the time. Awesome. So I'll just give me 1 minute and I'm going to go through the quick resources. So thank you for letting me know. Next. So these are some prevention resources. Prevent Connect is an online national community, which has web conferences. It's online preventionists, not just in the US, across around the world as well. The next. This is Reliance, which if you're involved in sports, it has a database about how you can be involved in sports and how sports can play a role in this moment in terms of prevention. Next. And then these are some of the CDC resources that I've basically referred. They are in the resource list. I just wanted to put it out there. Next. NSVRC is a primary prevention primer. It's a very simple and easy e-learning resource. I too take it even though I've been in prevention for a while. Next. And I just wanted to kind of wrap it up like in less than 30 seconds is to wrap it up. And I want to bring it back to my stories. I'm an adult now and I'm in this moment, not just for myself or my family or my community back in India. I am doing it for the young girls that are growing up either in San Jose or Bay Area or Silicon Valley. And for them, I envision living in a world free of street harassment or child abuse or sexual violence or domestic violence, right? I have got this courage from my grandmom and my family, and I'm inspired by their resilience. But I believe prevention can make it better, and it can make our world a safe and a better space. But before I wrap it up, and I just kind of say a quick goodbye, but I also would like to applaud and appreciate each of your time in terms of especially the prevention educators, the YWCA Silicon Valley team, and Community Solutions, and Aki, and all of you who are doing amazing work. So I would encourage our audience to have their back, support them, ask them questions, be a part of their community, and advance their prevention efforts. So thank you very much. And sorry for the extra time.
Thank you so much for that, Meghna. It's inspiring to hear you speak, and I know a lot of people on the panelists, we are also passionate about prevention and know how important it is to bring prevention to our communities, to our schools, to our youth. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so I'm going to try and figure out what I did here, but okay. Excuse me, I'm not the savviest when it comes to this, so thank you for bearing with me. Okay, so, and we will have time for questions at the end of the presentations as well. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to our community partners, and we are gonna start off with Melissa Luke from Aki. You would go ahead and like to share with us. Thank you so much for being here today. Melissa Luke is the Associate Director with Aki. Try not to cover the screen, but sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you so much, Erica, for inviting Aki to be part of this conversation. You know, I feel like Magna covered everything, so I just kind of want to bow and go about my business. Maybe I can talk a little bit about the larger agency, and then dive into the work we're doing around awareness and
Sure.
you know, community engagement. So as you can see on the screen, we've been around for 40 plus years. I think what is a little bit different for us perhaps is that we have three, I would say, focuses. We are a primary care nonprofit, so we do have a community-based health center, behavioral health services, which is actually our largest department, and then wellness. So when we talk about issues of gender-based violence, and for us specifically, that's domestic violence and human trafficking, we're looking at it through that lens of health and wellness. So I really appreciated Magna, you know, calling out that this is a public health issue. Looking at the work across the agency, I think in terms of youth-focused efforts, we have always been in schools focusing on underserved communities, primarily in East San Jose, working with the Asian, Southeast Asian, and Latino communities. Given the focus of our agency, doing a lot of work around substance abuse awareness and behavioral health issues and concerns. On the Asian Women's Home side of things, which is working with survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking, it's been primarily adults. You know, outreach to parents and to families in general, not so much youth. You know, that said, another piece Magna touched on in terms of making those connections from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, you know, having those integrated efforts across movements. All of that speaks very strongly to me because that's work we are trying to lift up more and more at ACCI. You know, how can we talk about teen dating violence and healthy relationships and sexual and reproductive health in the context of, you know, these youth substance abuse programs, in the context of our HIV/AIDS testing and prevention program. So all of that is kind of a work in progress, I would say. And very much in line with this moment in time, it seems, where all of our movements seem to be overlapping and starting to build on each other's efforts. I think that, you know, when I look at the trajectory of Asian Women's Home, and you look at the spectrum of prevention, we have always been on the outreach, education, and awareness raising side of things. And where I see us moving more and more is towards engagement, empowerment, and hopefully ultimately movement building. I think that, you know, we're going to talk about the promotores work a little bit later, but that's, you know, I think a really critical space for that work to happen. I think that our underserved communities, communities of color, immigrant communities, you know, have historically seen a lot of outsiders coming in and applying interventions and doing studies and doing surveys on community need and, you know, kind of bringing their interventions into the community without really seeking feedback, without, you know, empowering communities to really have these conversations for themselves and in their own cultural context and with their own storytelling, which was another piece I really appreciated about Magna's presentation. So, you know, that said, I think that's why we are very much looking into more of a community health workers or promotores approach. I think the research that I've done specifically with the Asian and Pacific Islander community, and, you know, ACCI, we focus on the API community, but we certainly work with everyone, especially being based in East San Jose. Most of our clients are you know, either Latino, Spanish speaking, or Vietnamese. So all of that work, I would say is ongoing in all diverse communities with, you know, full language access, another point that Magna brought up. When I look at least at lessons we've learned in the API community, I would say one is really you know, building community trust or working with people who are trusted community leaders, who are gatekeepers, who are cultural brokers, whatever you want to call them, right? The people who are trusted and who, you know, really understand that community. And, you know, the efforts to build those relationships can take years. I think another thing to be aware of is just the complex relationship we have to gender-based violence and to violence in the home. I think that, you know, communities of colors have often been misrepresented in mainstream media. And so there is, you know, I think that combined with having pride in our community, wanting to uplift our strengths as opposed to what is so often shown, which is our vulnerabilities. Shame and stigma in some of our communities around talking about issues in the home, not wanting to air dirty laundry. What all of that means is that these conversations are just really very difficult, and it's important to navigate through all of that. And be mindful of kind of that complexity. And, you know, I think that one message that we have found that is more resonant, you know, kind of in all of that, is really focusing on health and wellness as opposed to scarcity and deficit, right? So, you know, it's not so much the stereotypical photo of the woman with the bruise and the sad kids, and more, you know, what are our hopes and desires, and what is the resilience we want to build in our communities? Because everyone wants their kids and their families to be healthy and well, right? I think, you know, another issue to consider, especially in the communities we work with, is that gender-based violence may not be the most immediate concern for folks. You know, and I'm talking, you know, of course, about the practical realities if someone is, especially, you know, in these times, but in any times, undocumented, limited English speaking, and really struggling to survive, especially after they've left a situation of domestic violence or human trafficking. But, you know, I think it's just really, really, how should I say it? Totally lost my train of thought.
It's okay. That's been happening to me a lot lately. I think just a lot of what's, you know, with everything that's going on right now, I think that's something of the norm. So
in an early morning and early day. But, you know, oh yes, so the other piece is, I think, especially for immigrant and newly arrived communities, oftentimes intergenerational conflict can be a more immediate concern than domestic violence, right? So when we promote a message of healthy families and healthy communities, people often have more questions about how to relate to their American-born children and about immigrant integration and acculturation factors than anything else. That's not to say domestic violence isn't happening. That's not to say that, you know, human trafficking isn't happening, but that's just not the primary consideration. So I think it's really important to meet communities where they're at and start those conversations where communities are at. I know I have talked quite a bit, so maybe I'll just end by sharing one effort that we're doing through our health center, reaching out to survivors of domestic violence specifically. So Futures was mentioned earlier, Futures Without Violence. We are working with our wonderful sister agency next door to really raise awareness of IPV, intimate partner violence, in the healthcare setting, because we know that providers are a trusted resource and that survivors are going to their providers seeking, you know, physical and emotional and behavioral health care. So that is a pilot project we're currently doing to be able to, you know, better support healthcare providers to have these really important conversations in a new space. Yeah, so I'll end there, and I'm looking forward to the Promotores conversation.
Thank you, Melissa. I really appreciate how you said about talking about it, you know, the stigma that lies with child abuse and domestic violence. And it's really, you know, something that needs to be brought out in the open so we can have these discussions and really work towards ending abuse of all kinds. So thank you for that. I appreciate you. Okay, so now we have Erica Elliott from Community Solutions.
Yeah, so thank you very much for allowing us to be here, Erica, and for all the great panelists and just listen to everybody. It's always great to be around like-minded individuals that are kind of sharing and educating and bringing awareness to these complex issues, to be fair, you know? Go ahead, Erica. So just a little bit about Community Solutions. We're really here to create opportunities for change by promoting and supporting individuals, families, and the well-being of our community. We're a multi-service organization. And so we provide mental health and behavioral health services from zero all the way up to the elderly at various different levels. We work with people coming out of the criminal justice system. We have multiple housing programs and work with folks that are homeless and dual diagnosis. We work in school-based programs through prevention and gang intervention and substance use. And I'm from our Solutions to Violence Division, which provides support, direct services to survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, human trafficking, and prevention on those topics. Really fast. Go ahead, Erica. We're mainly focused in, so we serve all of Santa Clara County as well as San Bernardino County. So we have 2 different counties that we serve. A lot of our prevention efforts are focused in South County and in San Bernardino County. But human trafficking, we work with our partners, AKI, the YWCA, and all of our other coalition partners to promote prevention around human trafficking throughout the whole county as a coalition. So I wanted to talk a little bit, so for our prevention efforts, we're currently doing school-based prevention as well as community-based prevention. So we do a little bit of both. In our school-based prevention, we reached out to over 800 individuals last year before COVID. The pandemic kicked us out of the schools and the school shut down around these kind of topics where we really kind of delved in and educated students on healthy relationships, sexual assault, bullying, and oppression, which is really exciting to have those kind of dialogues with youth and freshmen at the high school, as well as doing community education in our local with teachers and other folks. And our Close to Home model is a program that's funded by the Office of Gender-Based Violence here in Santa Clara County. And we're utilizing this model called Close to Home, where we recruit 20 youth and young adults from our community that really represent. So we focus the city of Gilroy, and we give them orientation on what is sexual assault, domestic violence, and and prevention. Go ahead. So these are our innovators for Gilroy. They got their cool shirts, and one of our innovators is going to join us and talk just a little bit about some stuff they've been working on. Go ahead. They've been with us for a year now. This June. They all started in August, so we're almost they're in their 10-month anniversary right now. So it's really exciting to see how much they've accomplished in a year. The Close to Home model really focuses on 4 main phases, which is the first phase was assess, which is where we identify the city that we want to really focus in on and recruit people from that community that represent that community, that want to give back and learn and do something to make change in their community. And then we provide the training. And we train them on how to conduct a community assessment within the community, which does surveying, like basic geographic surveying, where they're looking at the community, looking at environmental factors that may exist, and create obstacles for change. They look at, they develop surveys. And so they developed a survey as a group, and they surveyed over 207 individuals from their local community. And ask them, like, what are the issues they see? What do they like about the community? What's working well? Kind of what are some issues that, what's their knowledge around sexual assault or domestic violence? And what are things that they need to see to change that? And then the second phase in talk is really where they then step back into the community and talk to them about the results from the survey, and also hear from them about what they think and their ideas on what solutions can be created in this community. And the next phase is the build phase, which is where they kind of look and work together to build a campaign to prevent sexual violence and sexual assault and domestic violence based upon the knowledge learned. And then the act phase, which is when they actually do something to promote healthy, positive norms in the community based on the learned information from their community on ways to make change. So it's a model that's been used up and down the state of California through the Department of Public Health. So it's really exciting. It was started in Dorchester, Massachusetts. And so we're really excited to kind of see how this is a pilot for us here in Gilroy. It's our first year. We have 2 different projects going, one in San Bernardino and one in Gilroy. So it's interesting to look at the different dynamics in both groups and how that's playing out. Go ahead, Erika. So one of the things that they've decided, and the groups and we're doing right now, is the hashtag Share Your Truth. And so we wanted to, I'm gonna pass it to Betty, our Gilroy innovator. She's gonna talk a little bit more about the work she's doing, and also talk about the current ACT phase that they're kind of doing for the community and ways that they're trying to promote healthy relationships. So I'll pass it to Betty.
Thank you, Erica. Hi, I'm Betty. I'm one of the innovators, and like Erica said, I've been part of this program since August. So we are doing a social media campaign. We are taking the lead on a new TikTok account, which is, TikTok is the newest, most popular social media platform for youth. As you can see, those are two of our videos. Those are just introductory videos to get out to the TikTok audience that, who we are and what our mission is. So some of our videos are also going to be posted on the Community Solutions pages on Instagram and Facebook, but the Gilroy innovators themselves are going to be taking over the TikTok account. So we're focusing on making our content specific to the TikTok audience. So although sexual assault and domestic violence are very serious topics, a lot of the times the younger people aren't going to look at something or pay attention if it's not in their language, if it's not, young, interesting, and different. So that's what we're really trying to do, is communicate this content, these ideas in a fun, interesting way. So some of the videos that we've already posted discuss issues such as the roles that power and control play in an abusive relationship, what you can do to prevent intimate partner violence and teen dating violence, signs of an abusive relationship, featuring different diagrams such as the power and control wheel, and then our most recent video, which we posted today, myths and facts about sexual assault. So these first videos are really informational because in our survey we discovered that a lot of people in Gilroy, especially the younger people as well as older people, they are aware of the concepts of domestic violence and sexual assault, and they know that they should consider them issues, but they don't know exactly how to tell when they are experiencing sexual violence or domestic violence or when a loved one is. So they don't really know the signs. So that was our first goal, was to try to get the basic information out there. And now we're going to start incorporating a lot more of the prevention content into our videos. So we have a lot more videos coming up. We're going to be having videos on sexual harassment, microaggressions, videos about asserting yourself, on how to be an upstander, how to diffuse a situation safely. And these are the videos where we're really going to start trying to communicate to the TikTok audience how they can get involved and how they can prevent sexual violence by, having conversations with their family members, basically changing the conversation. So, and the way we're doing this is we have a hashtag, hashtag Speak Your Truth, because we really want people to understand that it's okay to come forward, even though it's difficult to talk about these things, especially if it's something that happened to you and you're not really comfortable yet, of course, because of the, there's shame and confusion. We want to let everyone know that, we are all supportive and that their truth is worth sharing and that, they will be believed. So, all right, that's really all I have to say about that. Basically, we're just
You did a great job, Betty.
Yeah. Great job, thank you.
And I was just going to mention that Heidi put Heidi's on is one of our leaders for the innovators, and she put in the chat. You can follow us on TikTok and IG and Facebook to kind of see their campaign as it rolls out over the next month and a couple weeks and stuff like that. It's really exciting. And if you participate in the campaign, you have a chance to make a Chromebook too. We're going to be giving out different Chromebooks for folks. So there's instructions on there if you guys want to participate. So it's kind of exciting to see. It's really exciting to see and see the youth creativity. And, I never was on TikTok, and now I'm on TikTok, and I did a TikTok video the other day, and I was like, okay, this is fun. So
That's
it's kind of interesting and to learn from the youth and raise youth voices up. And so it's a little about the work that we're doing in South County.
Thank you both so much. That is such a great, social media is, I have 2 kids. I have a 14-year-old and 11-year-old, and I know that they are on TikTok all the time. So, that is a great way to reach our youth. Thank you for sharing. Erica, thank you so much for participating. You've helped me so much. I mean, first time I met Erica, I was told that she's a prevention guru, and I believe this to be true. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. I appreciate it. Okay, so now, again, my name is Erica. I'm the Prevention Education Community Engagement Coordinator here at YWCA. YWCA, we have a variety of services that help survivors in the community, but today I'm going to focus on our education and outreach, our school-based program, and community engagement that we have going on. So first, a little bit about our prevention programs. We are in about 30 schools throughout Santa Clara County right now. We are in the Evergreen School District, the San Jose Unified School District, and the Eastside Union School District. We have prevention programs that go from kindergarten all the way up to the college level. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit about those programs and what is included in those. So our K through 5th grade, we have our Child Abuse Prevention Program, our CAP. This talks about, with the students, we talk about basic rights. We let kids know that they have the right to be and feel safe at all times, and no one should take that right away from them. But unfortunately, there are some people who take that right away, so we talk about those people. We talk about strangers and bullies and people we know. Now, first thing when you talk about strangers, kids say stranger danger, because that's something they know. But unfortunately, we know that over 85% of people who harm are people we know. So we want to make sure that we are we want to talk about strangers and make sure that, you know, our children are safe around people they don't know, but we want to focus, we don't want to give them a false sense of security around people that they do know, because sometimes that happens. So then we talk about safe and unsafe touches, and we talk about the personal bubble. We tell the kids that the personal bubble is an imaginary bubble that covers your body from head to toe. You get to decide who comes in that bubble. So if somebody wants to come in that bubble, then they have to ask you first. So we're already planting that seed of consent without really saying that word. Also, we say that, you know, if you want to go into somebody's personal bubble, that you have to ask them. And the answer that they give you is the answer that you have to respect. We also talk about discipline versus abuse. We do safety planning with our kids. We give them the plan. The plan is something that the kids usually love to do, at least up until about 5th grade, because 5th grade is when kids get really cool and they don't want to participate in anything. So we have the kids stand up. We have them tell, you know, we want to empower kids to use their voice to tell somebody if they're feeling unsafe or uncomfortable, whether that be a stranger, a person they know, a kid on the playground. So we want them to practice that. We have them say no, stop. We tell them that they can walk away from an unsafe situation and find a safe place. We talk about where are your safe places. Then we talk about telling a trusted adult. So we talk to the kids about who trusted adults are, and we ask them to tell us who their trusted adults are. And a lot of our presentations, they're very engaging. It's a conversation with kids, and we have a lot of activities. So in this, again, is our child abuse prevention presentation, grades K through 5th. Then we have our teen empowerment program. So we have a middle school TEP, and that's 6th grade through 8th grade. We talk about bullying versus harassment. We talk about cyberbullying. We talk about sexual harassment versus flirting, which when you say the word flirting and a bunch of middle schoolers, they freak out too, which is a lot of fun. But it's a conversation that needs to be had, and they really are interested in this topic because they may have not heard anything like this before. We talk about the difference between healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships, what that looks like. We do some examples. Then we also talk about consent. So now we really dive a little deeper into these topics in middle school when we're talking about consent, what it is, what it means, and what consent is not. Then we have our high school TEP, which is a series of 3 workshops. The workshops run about 50 minutes long. We start off with teen dating violence prevention, sexual assault 101, and safe bystander intervention. So in these presentations, we talk again about what healthy relationships are, what they're not, consent. We talk about sexual assault, rape culture, gender boxes. So in the high school presentations, we definitely dive deeper into these conversations and what the myths are. Then we also talk about safe bystander intervention, what that means. How can we intervene in a situation of harm? Why are some reasons that people might not want to intervene? And we acknowledge that that might be hard for a kid to intervene if they see somebody getting bullied, or if they see sexual harassment, or someone is bothering them. So again, our presentations and our programs are really about empowering our youth, letting them know that they are the ones that get to decide what's safe and comfortable for their body, that no one else can make that decision for them. And this is our Shifting Boundaries program. So Shifting Boundaries is an evidence-based curriculum, lessons on relationships for middle school students. This is a wonderful program. We just started this year in 3 middle schools in the Evergreen School District. It's a series of 6 workshops along with a campus-wide awareness event that the students plan and lead by themselves. So, well, I help facilitate with them. But some of the topics of the lessons are, we talk about what a boundary is, what that means. We talk about personal boundaries, physical boundaries, how to set boundaries for yourself, consent and measuring personal space, mapping hot and cool spaces at school. So this activity is really, was a great activity. The students sat down and had an actual map of the school, and they looked around places and looked what places are safe, what places do they feel unsafe, and why? Why are the reasons that they feel safe here, and why do they feel unsafe here? So this was great because this is coming from students. This is, we're meeting students where they are, we're listening to their needs. This information was then put together and gave to the school so the principals can look at it and they can see what the students' needs are, what their concerns are, what is making them feel safe, but what makes them feel safe too. Then we talk about flirting or hurting. Again, this is talking about sexual harassment versus flirting. We talk about catcalling. We talk about what that means, what it looks like. Because when you ask kids, they hear the word sexual harassment, but they don't really understand what that means. They have like a basic understanding. So we dive a little deeper and talk about what that looks like, that it could be things that people call games. It's really not a game, it's sexual harassment. And how can we spot that? And how can we stop that? And then again, talking about healthy and unhealthy relationships and safe bystander intervention. So the safe bystander intervention is the last workshop because they've learned about all these different subjects, what they mean and what it is. So now we talk about, okay, so what can we do? How can we help to make our school a safer place and our community a safer place? And these are some pictures from the campus-wide awareness events. They had different activities. Some of the students did a healthy relationship bill of rights, where they came up with different rights that everybody deserves in a healthy relationships and had their peers sign it. And we had a wheel that had different questions on it, like what is consent? What are boundaries? The students would spin the wheel and then they would win a prize. It was so inspiring to see these young people engaging with their peers, having that conversation about what healthy relationships are, and really teaching others. This program is something that they can take into next year as they're going to high school, and also into their personal lives and then into their community. Okay, so next is our T Club, and this is for high school students. So this T Club stands for Teens Ending Abuse. We have this in 3 schools in the Eastside Union School District. We have it Oak Grove, Andrew Hill, and Piedmont Hill. And this is similar to the Shifting Boundaries model, but this one is actually based off bringing in the bystander curriculum. And it's a series, it's 12 workshops, so it's 12 weeks long. They have, every workshop has a different subject. They dive a little deeper into what healthy relationships are, what sexual assault is, how to be a safe bystander, why it could be hard to be a safe bystander, and they also do campus-wide awareness events. And they have, we have an Instagram page, it's T Club SV, where they post a lot of information, and it's geared towards youth. So it's a really fun page. If you have any young people in your life, I suggest checking it out. And this is, so on the college level, last April was for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Before the shelter in place happened, we had planned to work with the San Jose State Beyond Football program and do a workshop that focused on consent. And then they were going to help with the Denim Day project. But unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. We were able to do a virtual toolkit, and we worked with them to create this video. This video was created by us, and then we partnered with the football players, and I'm going to play it right now.
Consent means to ask somebody for permission to do something and accepting their answer. So, like, how do you want to talk about comments for? Yeah, exactly. That's why you need their consent first. Oh, so if I need consent to go to football on Friday, does that mean I can go with me? No, just because you got consent on Friday does not mean you have consent. Consent is an ongoing conversation between you and the other person, and needs to be asked for every single time. What if I get my consent to someone, but I'm sitting online? Can I get it back? Yes, consent is reversible. Can be taken back at any time. Consent is a willing, enthusiastic, and active yes.
Remember, only you get to decide what feels comfortable for your body and your mind. You have the right to feel safe at all times, and no one should take that away. If you or someone you know is experiencing violence in a dating relationship and wants to talk, the YWCA is for them.
So I know that some people couldn't hear the video. I apologize for that. We will have this available, though, on our social media page also. But what it really was is it was the football players talking about consent, what it is. This is something that we're going to use as an educational tool for our middle school and elementary school students. I think it's very important to see, especially young men, talking about consent, and athletes sharing what consent is, talking about the importance of that. So we are really happy and lucky to partner with them on this project. And again, I will share this video. I apologize for not being able to hear it. So now I would like to introduce Vaibhava. She is our Shifting Boundaries student leader, and she's going to say a few words for all of us. Vaibhava, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you so much for having me today. I was actually really excited and looking forward to this day. And like Erica introduced me, hi, my name is Vaibhava Rajesh, and I'm going into the 9th grade. I have been participating in YWCA programs since the 4th grade, and I'm so glad that I was able to get that opportunity. I still remember learning about the plan like Erica talked about in her presentation, and I still remember having a representative come to us and say no, stop, walk away, tell someone. Like those 3 steps stuck with me even 4 years later. And we were continuing learning about those programs in the same steps. And as we got older, we were able to talk about flirting and different ways to approach sexual violence. And the messages were really well thought out. And I thought that it was really nice how we were able to transition from smaller messages, but the hidden idea was still in there and was very clear to me. Now in 8th grade, I was able to participate in the Shifting Boundaries program, which was all about learning about healthy boundaries in relationships and recognizing unhealthy relationships. I was also given resources and guidance on how to aid others when they are in an unhealthy relationship. And I think as teenagers, it's actually really tough to talk about heavy topics like this, and we assume that we're never really going to come in contact with this kind of situation. But I feel like no matter what, it is still important to learn about these things, and it's really important to be educated on these topics because it happens far more often than we assume. Now, I think that we always should just stay educated, and that's what YWCA really does and helps us do, which is really important as young individuals. Now, recently I had dealt with someone that had constantly like harassed and messaged me on social media and continuously asked me for my information and number, which I had refused to give out several times. And even though despite me refusing my information and sharing that with the other person, they were able to gain access to my information and continued messaging me several times. And I had to block this person on several different outlets. And I also had to make sure that I was keeping safe, but I still had several attempts to contact me, which was really frightening. And thankfully, I had the resources to deal with the situation. And I remembered what we had learned in this Shifting Boundaries program workshops. Otherwise, I would have panicked and I wouldn't have told anyone about it. And I feel like in situations like these, it's very important to be able to talk to someone or have resources to reach out to. And thankfully, I was able to talk to Erica about a solution during one of our online meetings. And I was able to talk to her, and I was able to calm down about it. And I was able to come to kind of a solution on what I should do. And Erica suggested that keeping track of the online stuff is very important and helpful in the future. Now, I would say that I'm so lucky to have experienced something like this, because I feel like in the previous generations, these things weren't discussed. Like typically, you wouldn't really seeing this, like my parents' generation or my parents' parents' generations, like this was such a taboo topic, and especially in the API community, these topics are never discussed typically in a family household. So it's important that we have this outside resource kind of helping us and guiding us through these things, because no matter how rare it might seem that these situations occur, they happen on an almost daily scale. And we were also able to, through the Shifting Boundaries workshops, create this amazing awareness event at my school at Quimby. And basically what we were able to do is we were able to create many games that participants could play, and even start a social media campaign, which was really exciting. And it was such a success. So many people showed up, and I was able to enjoy teaching people about what a healthy relationship looks like and the importance of having healthy boundaries between everyone. And it just made me realize, working with my peers and everyone, no matter how different our backgrounds were, since we were a very diverse group, the best thing that we can all do is spread the word and create an engaging conversation, which I know YWCA really helped start in my community. And I'm so happy to have this opportunity. And I know I will definitely take this information that have been taught through these programs with me throughout high school, college, and definitely in the workplace and beyond. And these are some things that are very important that I feel like we should be taught at a young age, and these things will take throughout our entire life. We can teach our children about it, and our children will learn about it as well. And I'm just so happy that I was able to experience this, and I hope that so many other kids will be able to as well. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, you make me so proud. It's so wonderful. I mean, it was such an amazing group, and it's wonderful to hear you speak about it. So thank you so much, Eva, for being part of this. So that is the end of this portion of the presentation. I'm just going to get out of screen on this. Okay. And now I'd like to introduce, we're honored to have the president of the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Chavez, with us today. Thank you so much for joining this important discussion. We are very happy to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me join you. I think I'm just making some closing comments for all of you, but I got a chance to listen, and I just wanted to say, there are many of you on this call that I don't know personally, but there are many of you that I do know personally. And I can't help but feel incredibly inspired by all of you. And let me just say a couple reasons why. For a very, very long time, and I think our young speaker, just when she talked about what it was like back in the day in terms of what people do or don't talk about, you're right. People didn't talk about inappropriate touching or sexual assault or even domestic violence for a very, very long time. And these are all subjects that are so taboo. And there are women who came before us, women and men, but mostly women who came before us, who very slowly have lifted the veil of these issues and have put in the forefront the value of women and girls in our community. And all of your organizations have been doing that for such a long time in a really profound way that in some ways it's been happening so slowly that we don't recognize the change and where we are in the process. I think for a lot of us, particularly those of us who are, well, older than most of you, I would put that in my category. I often think about what the future will look like. And one of the things that I'm just really struck by, both with COVID-19, with the, the uprisings in our community, I am struck by how powerfully and important the role of women leaders are in making change. And I want to make sure that these movements don't happen without the recognition of the role of women. And I think about that with every movement we've been involved with, by the way, including the women's movement in some respects, because if you think about that, there were so many women of color who were really playing a leadership role, and they've essentially been erased out of history. And we can't allow us, our leadership and our styles and our way of communicating and our way of getting work done be erased at this time. So to all of the organizations and individuals who played a leadership role in helping us be in a better space, helping us think more critically, that each of these tools that you're offering, they're not just tools for survival, they're tools for leadership, right? You are teaching young women and men how to lead with respect, how to lead with grace, how to engage others in a respectful way. And if you think about it, if at our very core, we had this patina of respect as a core way of being a human being, most of the challenges we're having right now wouldn't have happened. And let me just wrap up, because I know you've been listening to a lot of really strong people, and I'm really here just to say thank you to each and every one of you. As you think about the role that you're playing right now, like where you're sitting in history right this moment, and you take a look around and you consider the place you are and the place you personally want to be, and you find that place and the place you want the women's movement to be, that as that starts to become clearer to you, let's share that with each other. Because when I look back at this time, I want to be able to say, one, we all want to say we were doing the right thing when we were supposed to be doing it. But this is more than that. This is us accepting the role that women, that as women, that we have a profound role in setting the agenda for human development. I don't mean for the Board of Supervisors. I don't mean for the state. I don't mean for your organization. For human development. The work that you're doing is helping human beings see where we can grow and where we can be. It is profound. Your role is profound. Do you understand that? Does that make sense to everybody? Your role is profound. And I, for one, am just going to be so excited, especially to see where you younger women take us, because I want to be in retirement. I'm going to be sitting with Tanis. You're younger than I am, but Tanis and Aaron, and we're going to be having a glass of tea. Now that I saw the tea, we're going to have a glass of tea, and we're going to be talking about what you all are doing that we couldn't imagine. So thank you for letting me be with you. You all humble and amaze me. Do good things. Be bold. And I just made a big mistake. Don't touch your face. Wash your hands and wear your masks. All right? Thanks for letting me join you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Chavez. We appreciate you being here, your inspiring words, and your continuous support for the YWCA. Thank you so much, and the work that we're all doing. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
My honor. Thanks, guys. Or gals. Go.
So we are getting close to 3:30, but we do have just one more portion to talk about, because we have a program, Promotoras program, that I'm going to invite my colleague Daniela to start the conversation and just explain a little bit more about what that is. So Daniela, you want to take over, please?
Hi everyone, my name is Daniela and I am the Promotoras Community Engagement Coordinator at YWCA. So what is the Promotoras program? At YWCA's Promotoras program aims to empower Latinx women with the training and tools necessary to change the narrative in our community around intimate partner violence and sexual assault, and connect specifically our Latinx underserved community members who have been impacted by violence to resources and services. By using an empowerment approach, promotoras receive culturally appropriate leadership training in their native language to strengthen and broaden their knowledge on the intersectionality of intimate partner violence and sexual assault in the Latinx community. These women are then able to teach and empower their own communities while simultaneously dismantling machismo culture and begin healing transgenerational and intergenerational trauma in their own families and in their own communities, ultimately helping transform their communities to be free from violence. So why do we use the promotora model? Why promotoras? Which is the community health model that has been used by very different health initiatives. So given the taboo nature of topics of intimate partner violence and sexual assault within some Latinx communities, promotoras are best positioned to help disseminate the necessary information to their communities from a personal and relatable perspective, bridging the gap between their communities and the access to resources and services available to survivors. Who are the promotoras? Promotoras are role models and agents of change. Promotoras are natural advocates and leaders in their communities and have a great understanding of what their communities' needs are. Currently, the Promotoras program was piloted on the east side of San Jose from 2017 to 2019. Our aim for 2020 is to continue to target Latinx communities in San Jose while also expanding outreach to entities with large Latinx populations in northern Santa Clara County, including Mountain View, Sunnyvale, as we recognize the need to connect our Latinx underserved community members to resources and services goes beyond the limits of San Jose. And I'm very excited about doing this program. We have continued our cohort here in San Jose, and prior to the shelter in place, we had gotten in full mode into our calendar and using their, whatever they feel comfortable, however empowered they feel, it's promotora led into going into their communities. And I am just there to guide them and to answer any questions. But the idea is for the promotoras to take the lead. And that includes going to coffee with the principal and give presentations, doing a lot of tablings, and going into different communities as well as through churches. We currently started our Sunnyvale cohort with the help of First Five. We were First Five, and as well as Sunnyvale Community Services, we were able to piggyback on the efforts that these organizations were already doing in the city of Sunnyvale, considering that as an agency, we had not been in Sunnyvale. So taking into consideration and that humility that as an outsider coming into a community that is not our own, that they don't know us, is using these agencies to kind of vouch for us and also start creating these relationships. I love what Melissa said from Aki about, you know, these relationships take time, and by being able to use the relationships that we already had, we were able to get our cohort in Sunnyvale. And these ladies are amazing, and they are ready to, and not just amazing, but they were already involved in the city of Sunnyvale. So they already know what organizations, what resources are there available. And so being able to talk to them about the program and for them to join. Our curriculum consists of 10 sessions. These sessions are, the first session is about talking about our culture in the Latinx community and how we perceive violence. Then from there, we talk about healthy boundaries, healthy relationships, and then intimate partner violence, sexual assault. My favorite part of it is sexual assault. I am a huge workers' rights advocate, so I also included that as well. So we can differentiate the difference between harassment and when it's a workplace HR matter, but also when it becomes a criminal aspect as well. And we also talk about the survivors' rights and what one has access. We also decided to include, since our agency does provide services for domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, we also decided to include a curriculum of human trafficking in CSEC so that our promotoras are able to have a broader understanding. And then after we go over what those are, we talk about how we can support survivors as community members. We talk about the role of an advocate and how the movement actually started grassroots, and prior to having to be 65-hour trained or 40-hour trained, it was women helping women and in their communities to how to help survivors. So we talk about that and how promotoras can help their community members to be able to get them connected to resources. And also, if this promotora, if she's saying it's okay to trust this agency, then they're more likely to want to be able to get help and get connected, because then it's not a foreign idea. It's not something that, oh, we don't do that, because they know someone that knows that information. So hoping to make the survivors more comfortable. And then we talk about what the role of promotora is, and that is going into their communities, going into the schools. We had gone to the consulate a couple of times, and also a lot of different tablings in just the schools where their communities are at, and also mapping their communities so we know what they know. So we have a pastor in one of our cohorts, and so we talked about how we can leverage her role as a leader in her community, in her church, but also her connections to the other churches in the city of San Jose, so that we are able to get that connection. And then finally, we have a graduation, which is a tour of our agency, so that they know who are the advocates, so that when they give their community members a referral, they know exactly, like, this is the team that's going to take care of your community. And so that's very important, as it is a community, as it is the trust, and hoping to build those relationships. And what to me is most beautiful is that they actually know that the advocates there, since we are specifically working with the Latinx community, is that your advocates speak Spanish, that the 24-hour support line, there is going to be someone that is able to speak the language. And so letting them know, so that when they let their community know, is your community is going to be taken care of.
Thank you so much, Daniela. I know that we had planned to have a bigger discussion around this group, and I apologize that we are actually a little past our end time. I want to let the audience know, though, that we, Melissa and Perla, that we can provide information regarding both of your promotoras groups in our follow-up email to all the participants. So with that being said, thank you. I mean, like Magna, I can sit here and talk about prevention all day. I love prevention. So I just want to say thank you for everybody that participated today. Community Solutions, thank you for being such a great partner. Same with Aki. Magna, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I love hearing stories. So thank you so much. To the YWCA, our social justice team, thank you for everybody who's helped put this prevention webinar on. I'm so grateful for all of you. Tanis, thank you for being here as well. So that is the end of this prevention webinar. Thank you so much for participating. Like I said, we will have a follow-up email for all the participants with all the information that was provided here today. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Stay cool and stay healthy. Thank you.